Welcome guys and girls. Today's video I'm going to ask you to create something in Sketchpad. The file is already pre-made in my outbox, so you just need to go to my outbox under Geometry CP and find the file called Midpoint Intro. Pause the video for now until you get to that file and you open it. Okay, so hopefully you got the file open and hopefully you can find page 1. It's on the bottom left-hand corner. If it doesn't look exactly like this, then you're not on the right page. So please try to find this page. You might be able to do it with just the directions and not need my help at all, but find the video and the spot if you can't figure out exactly what I want. I want you to create a segment and label it AB. So I'm going to draw a segment. I'm going to take my text tools and I'm going to label it AB. Yours probably came up AB. Mine, because I was working on it, already has letters. So A here and B here. If you need to change it, you just double click on them. The second thing I asked you is to create a midpoint. We create a midpoint by highlighting this segment and going up to construct midpoint. If midpoint wasn't available, then you don't have the right thing highlighted or you have too much highlighted. I asked you to label that M, so you're going to take your A and you're going to click on it, and it's not going to be M, so you're going to double click and make it M. The next thing I asked you to do is to measure AM. Since you have not created the segment AM, in order to measure it, you must click A and then M. So once I highlight AM, I go to measure and I'm finding the distance. Then I ask you to measure MB and I go to measure the distance. You do not have to have the same distance as me. If you want, change it. My favorite number is 5, so I'm going to change it to 5.54. Okay, so you can leave it on whatever you want. Does not have to be the same as me. Hopefully, if I ask you to create a midpoint, you realize that it's in the middle of the segment. So AM and MB should be the same length. Please go to page 2. In page 2, I asked you to create a triangle. And create a triangle by simply grabbing 3 of the segments, creating 3 segments to make a triangle. Your triangle does not have to be equilateral. It does not have to be isosceles. And I asked you to label the triangle ABC. And if you do this, most of you will come up A, B, C. Mine came up, so I'm going to change it to A, B, and C. I asked you then to create the midpoints of segment AB. So I'm going to highlight AB, make sure nothing else is highlighted. I'm going to highlight AB and I'm going to go to construct midpoint. You also see that this control M is highlighted. That's a shortcut. So next time when we create the next segment, instead of having to click on this, you can just hit control M. So I'm going to hit control and then it says to create the midpoint of AB and BC. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm just going to hit Control M and that midpoint's going to come up. I asked you to label them F and G and it doesn't matter which one, but we're going to label one of them F and one of them G. And my next line says to connect FG using the segment tool. So I'm going to grab the segment tool and I'm going to connect FG. And then I ask you to measure FG, so you can either just highlight it, but when you highlight it and measure it, length comes up, and you see how it says the measure of FG? That's absolutely fine. But if you highlight just the dots, like AC, then when I measure it, I get distance, and it comes out to me a little bit nicer. Doesn't matter whichever one your preference is. This is kind of easier, but I don't like the measure, so I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm just going to do point FG and measure the distance. Hopefully you can see the relationship between those two. If you can't, maybe make it a number that's pretty easy to read. So to me, 10 is a pretty easy number. I had it right on 10. So 10, and then what do you notice? That FG is 5. So maybe you can make that relationship between that segment and this segment. Lastly, I'd like you to go to page 3. And you're basically doing exactly the same thing you just did. You're going to create a triangle and label it ABC. So you're going to create any triangle you want, and you're going to label it ABC. And then I ask you to create the midpoint of each segment, AB, BC, and AC. So I'm just going to go back to my arrow. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to hit Control M because that's the shortcut for midpoint. I'm going to highlight just the segment and hit Control M, click off it, and highlight the third segment and hit Control M. That now gave me the midpoints of all 3 segments. It says label the 3 different midpoints D, E, F. Does not matter which one's which, so I'm just going to name this one D, this one E, and this one F. You do not have to have the same 3 D, E, F as me. It just said to label the 3 D, E, F. And then I say connect the 3 midpoints using the segment tool, basically making a triangle inside the big triangle. So I'm taking this and I'm going to connect the 3, and I'm basically making a triangle inside. These segments that are inside, that are created by the midpoints of the outside of the triangle, are what we call mid-segments. So I'm going to measure the big sides of the triangle. So for example, I'm going to measure AB. Now you could do it by just highlighting it, or you can do AB. And I'm going to measure the distance, and then I want the distance outside here. And then I'm going to measure BC because it told me to measure the outsides. And then I'm going to measure AC. And then it said measure the sides of the big triangle and all sides of the small triangle. So now I'm going to measure inside here. Measure distance DE. I'm going to put here. I'm going to measure EF, and I'm going to put it here. And then I'm going to measure DE. DF, I'm sorry. Okay, and that's all it asked you to measure. Maybe you want to try to make your segments all pretty much even, but it might be hard to do. So I made this side. All right, I'm going to make it 10 maybe. You don't want to make it equilateral. You could, but equilateral just kind of gets boring. So that one's 10. I'm going to make the bottom one maybe 8. As close to 8 as I can. 8. And then I'm going to probably leave that one as 9.38. It gets kind of tricky if you try to move that one too. So you didn't have to do that. You could leave it as is, but I'm going to leave mine like that so it's kind of easy to see that if that's 10, how much is this segment? 5. And if this is 8, this segment is 4. So maybe we can make that relationship. And then page 4, if you go there, it says save this file in your Z drive. Just save this sketchpad, and then if everyone gets done, I'm going to tell you what to do with it. If everyone's not done, then we'll finish it tomorrow and just find something to do until everyone is done testing. Save this in your Z drive. All right, thanks for staying with me and making those 3 constructions. Talk to you later. Bye.